Okay, my machine says I'm recording now. So how's everybody doing? Off for another week. How are you handling that heat wave? I know it's getting calmer now, but it was pretty tough. So we're into our next lesson, which will be scheduled for April the 18th. It's entitled Spell It in English. So hopefully that'll be a nice learning session, history-wise, and then educational-wise for English, all right? Because every language has a beginning and a history, all right? Okay, so let me perform the usual steps. Share the screen. Go to the material. Downsize myself. I'll see you at the end. Bye-bye. There we go. Let's put down. Okay. We've got the slideshow. Let me see if I can get to the beginning. All right, that looks good. Still want to move. There we go. So, again, we're in English 101. Class is developing communication skills. And this will be week 3, okay? All right, here we go on our little history journey here. Spell it in English. English spelling is confusing and chaotic, and that comes from the word chaos, which means there's no rules right now. Again, when we have a chaotic society, people are burning things, looting things, attacking people, it's chaotic. And English language is considered chaotic. And I've always said it's because, unlike, let's say, Korean or Japanese, which has strict rules, and you can know that you always can follow these rules and not really be confused so much. But English is a mix of so many different languages, they break the rules. So you have to remember a lot of exceptions. And here we go. As any student of English knows all too well, how can the letters O-U-G-H spell so many different sounding words, they ask. And here we go. Like dough, okay? Dough is what you make bread from. You know, you slap that mixture together and then you put it in a pan and you cook it and it comes out, or you bake it and it comes out bread. That is dough, right? Then you have bow or bow, yeah, bow. And that belongs to a ship. It's the front part of the ship. Then you have rough with an F sound, which we know is the opposite of smooth. A lot of women, when the husband or boyfriend doesn't shave and they have a lot of whiskers, they say, oh, his face is rough, right? And then we had dough, and then this last one is through with a W sound at the end. So again, all these are exceptions. They don't follow a straight rule, which says if it ends in GH, it has a certain sound. You know, like let's say French, if it ends in T, they always know that it's going to be silent. But here, you know, you have 4 different sounds. So, and what about a word like kernel? See, it sounds like an R in the middle instead of a kana, right? Which clearly contains no R. Yet it pretends, which means it sounds like it does. And then we have ache, which I've had a lot of students in the past say ache, right? I have a head ache, stomach ache, but it's actually ache, not achy or aishi, right? Sorry, Korean students. So ache has a K sound, ache, you hear that sharp K sound? Instead of the cha sound of arch. So McDonald's, if you go to the McDonald's sign and you see those big, it looks like an M and they're yellow, those are called arches, right? Some people say, no, they're French fries. No, there's just, I mean, maybe the symbolism, but they make an M for McDonald's and they're arches. They're not flat. Okay? There are no simple rules for English spelling, see? But there is an explanation behind its complexity. We have only to look back in history. So like I said, here's going to start our English lesson. Over the centuries, the English language has been like a magnet attracting words from numerous other languages. So let me say this too. If you understand that, English attracts words from numerous other language. So I'll give you some examples. I don't know if you know, but the United States takes in the most foreign people legally and illegally than any other country. Okay, so when the foreign people come in, they come in with their language and their customs and their food and their, you know, many other things. So let's stay in the food category. If we in the United States, if there is not an equivalent or the same kind of dish that's brought in to which we would then translate it into English, then we have to use the original language from the other country and just it's going to sound American style, right? So for example, Mexicans brought a lot of Mexican food. So they said, in the United States, do you have taco? No, we don't have a taco. So I had to use a Mexican word, but American people say, I want a taco, right? And same for fajitas, enchiladas, burritos, all that stuff. So, and when Koreans came, they said, hey, do you have a word for kimchi? You guys make kimchi here, right? No, we don't have kimchi. So we have to say kimchi, right? So that's what happens. And when you get these new, I'll give you another example. When you get these words from another language, sometimes they're impossible to follow our grammar rules. For example, we know a word can be singular, banana, or plural, bananas, right? But you bring the word kimchi, and it's, yeah, I have to ask the Korean people, is kimchi a singular one thing, or does it represent a number of things, right? So if they don't fit the rule, they just throw the word, and you're going to have to remember how they fit in there, right? Okay. So again, at the bottom, repeating, over the centuries, the English language has been like a magnet, attracting words from numerous other languages. It all started with the Britons, of course, meaning the people originally from Britain, later we called Britain, and ancient people living in a part of Western Europe that eventually became the British Isles. You know, that Isles is a British use of English. We say islands here. And if you see down here, it says British Isles, Great Britain, England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And to let you know, if you didn't know, Scotland, the people from Scotland, they have some language called Scottish. They're not originally English people. And then Wales, you know, the language from Wales. The gal, she doesn't really do acting anymore, but she was really hot before. Catherine Zeta-Jones, she's from Wales, and she speaks Welsh, like our grape juice, right? And then Ireland, people are Irish, and there's another Irish language, okay? So the Britons spoke a language called Celtic. Now, oh, here's another one. I think Temujin and a couple other guys, you guys are sports fans, right? Okay, so these people spoke Celtic, but you see this word? Which famous basketball team uses, this is their name, but they pronounce it Celtic, right? Well, it's the Boston Celtics basketball, right? So made a change here in the United States. We're American people compared to other people from other countries are kind of lazy with trying to pronounce words correctly. You know, I'd have to say, probably in my experience, probably the worst one, since Americans don't take the time to say, how do you pronounce that correctly in your language and then mimic it, is karaoke. Let's go sing some karaoke, dude. You know, I'll never forget, I was working in a bar someplace or in a casino, and this one guy turned in his paperwork, and then he told the manager, yeah, we're gonna go sing karaoke. And there was a new lady there I hadn't met, and I only saw her from far, and I thought, is she Latina or whatever? Turns out she was Japanese, and she got very angry. And she went up to the guy and said, it's karaoke. And the American guy's like, hey, hey, hey. He couldn't even do it or try. So as they say, American people kind of slaughter the language, right? Bulgogi, not bulgogi, right? So here's the reasons why, folks. So anyway, this Celtic, which was a combination of the early forms of Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, that's the reason. When the Britons were conquered by the Romans and later the Germanic tribes in Germany, later be called Germany, their language was also invaded. The merging or mixing of the languages gave birth to Old English, an early form of the modern English we know. So we could probably, I don't know, understand maybe 40% of it. And then the other 60 would be like, ah. And then the Latin alphabet replaced, with a few exceptions, the ancient Germanic alphabet. I'm curious, do you know, when people say Latin, they throw it around. A lot of American people don't know because they don't study the history of languages, which is very fascinating. So which people spoke Latin, right? And then, you have any idea? Well, the old Romans, okay, the old Romans. So if you saw the movie Gladiator, or you see movies about gladiators and Roman armies, they all spoke what is called the Roman language. And when they invaded and conquered Germanic people for a while, it kind of took over most of the original Germanic alphabet. And then what's interesting about that, you do have some people that pay a little attention. They'll say, hey, wait a minute, teacher, if Rome was in Italy, how come the Italians don't speak Latin? What happened? Well, Rome was a giant empire and covered most of Western and a lot of Eastern Europe, which later became Eastern Europe. And then when they lost power, ironically, it was the Germanic people that eventually invaded and, you know, at the end conquered the last steps of the Roman Empire. The people that spread out into France, because I can ask you this, it spread out into what are called Latin languages. Now, do you know what the Latin languages are? Okay. There are a total of, let me count here, 5. There are 5. Okay. I'll give you 2 seconds. 1, 2. So from Latin came forth Spanish, Italian. So that's why Italians speak Italian, or Romans speak Italian. French, Portuguese. And then a lot of one that people don't get is, but it's easy if you're thinking Rome, Romanian, right? These are the Latin languages, and they came from the original Latin, okay? Changed over time for the people that developed different countries. So interesting stuff. In the 9th century, the conquering Norsemen from Scandinavia, anytime you say North, you're talking about the Scandinavian countries, Vikings, added their pinch of language spice. They're trying to be funny, their pinch of language spice. There was no spice involved, as did the French in the 11th century. By the 14th century, English, with its mix of at least 5 languages, had evolved or turned into what is called Middle English and had become Britain's official language. See how it took time? But those are the roots. At that time, however, its spellings were far from consistent, which means very not consistent, or even rational. That's pretty scary, not even rational. Imagine talking to a person that's not rational. We call them irrational. It's like, why are you picking up that frog and biting its head off? I don't know. That's pretty irrational. Don't do that, Temujin. Many dialects had developed over the centuries, and sometimes people adopted the spelling used in one part of the country and the pronunciation used in another. So this dialect is kind of like what other countries, let's say, for example, Philippines. Philippines has a lot of different people with a lot of different dialects. And I'm always curious, is that just because of different locations that they had so many different dialects? I'd have to ask Pamela Calaibo, who's the language doctor from the Philippines. She has a doctorate in Tagalog, Visayan, Negritos, and I think Pansit languages. So I'd have to ask her. For instance, today we use the Western English spellings for busy and berry. That should be bury, right? But we give the first London pronunciation busy and the second Kentish. If you saw on the map, it was an area called Kent. Pronunciation of berry. That's more like it, like strawberry, blueberry, not bury. Of course, this all happened when English was primarily a spoken language, right? A lot of people, or I should say most people, did not know how to write. And if you don't know how to read and write, then that means you are illiterate, right? Nothing wrong with that. That's just the way things used to be. In a lot of other countries too, they didn't even try to develop written language. They had people, scholars that remembered their history and everything through oral abilities. Sounds pretty tough. So only scholars knew how to read and write. So like even in the Roman times, usually the church people, unless you had governmental people later. But the regular people, probably not, unless you had the money to pay. Even they appear to have been quite indifferent. So indifferent means you just don't care, right? Like when I was younger, you guys probably don't remember, you're too young. Let's say in the 80s, 1980, that's a lot. I don't know how many of you guys were born in the 80s. I think most of you guys were born in the 90s. But the Lakers had this great basketball team all through the 80s with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And through the 80s, they won 4 or 5 world championships. And man, I was on that, watching games all the time and reading the newspaper. We didn't have any internet then. And I was a big fan of the Lakers, man. I lived and died with the Lakers. But now, as you see this word here, even they appear to have been quite indifferent. For the last few years, for the Lakers, I could really care less. You know, I'm not excited about LeBron James or these other all-star guys that they brought the last few years. I think the Lakers won the championship last year or the year before. Actually, I don't even, I'm indifferent. It's like, if someone tells me, yeah, they're in the championship again, I'm like, I really don't care, you know, whatever. I guess that happens with age, right? You get older, other things are more important, like Taco Bell. Okay, so Different to matters of consistency in spelling. So that means it was not an important thing for them to, the spelling, it must be 100% correct. So when that's not the number one thing, then of course, you're going to have spelling problems, my friend. So we were known to spell the same word several different ways in a single sentence. That is chaos. Okay, that is chaos. In my, history and my observations of things, I can only say in a small way. Here they said, you could spell it many different ways in one sentence. We don't know why we do that. But I've never been able to have a Korean person give me the question to this answer. I've noticed through the years, I've seen them on maps. I've seen people say them both ways. But I've seen Busan spelled with a B and Busan spelled with a P. And I don't know why they're different. I've seen them, like I said, on maps, people speaking that way, and in books. When I've asked Korean people, hey, why? Does this guy say Busan and the other guy says Busan? And they're like, 몰라요. So, that's an example of how these things can happen. Luckily in Korean, it's on a very minor scale. So even after William Caxton set up England's first printing press, that's the thing that makes books, in the late 15th century, and the written word became available to everyone. So I guess everybody was illiterate until the 15th century. Standard spelling wasn't considered important. And again, if it's not considered important, it's going to be a lot of mistakes, chaos. As a matter of fact, the typesetters in the 1500s, made things even worse by being very careless about spelling. So the typesetters are the one that does the final printing part with the ink, and they didn't even care. If a blank space needed to be filled in or a line was too long, they simply changed the spellings of the words to make them fit. Jesus Christ. I think I mentioned last week about a spell check on your computer when you're doing papers. Imagine the spell check. The spell check is to work for accuracy, to make sure it covers your mistakes, because we're humans, right? We're all going to make mistakes, and English is a crazy language. But imagine your spell check, it doesn't look for accuracy, it just looks to fill out the empty spot. So you might, let's say you write something like Apple, and it's like, oh my God, there's too much of an empty spot there. Let's give Apple 3 P's and 2 L's, right? Like, oh my God. So that's what was going on in the 15th century. Moreover, many of the early printers in England were from Germany or Holland and didn't know English very well. If they didn't know the spelling of a word, they made up one. Okay? That's what happens when you don't know the language too well, right? Make these kind of printed mistakes that can be very funny. Different printers each had their favorite spelling. So one word might be spelled 5 or 6 different ways, depending on who printed the passage. So again, here I could give you an example like Temujin comes from Mongolia, so he doesn't know the correct spellings of some words, so he kind of spells them in a Mongolian way. And then Alex doesn't know the spellings either, but he's from Korea. So he says, if they sound a little more Hangukmal, I'm going to do it this way. So you can get a book from each guy, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? These words are completely different, But again, 15th century. Throughout this period, names and words appear in many different forms. For instance, where can be found as were, where. Actually, that's where, yeah. Where, and where. But that became were. The last one became were. The first word doesn't exist anymore. This one either. This one does, but they put an E on it. And this, they dropped the A. This is around. People were very liberal about their names. More than 80 spellings of Shakespeare's name have been found. 80. Jesus Christ, are we playing word scramble? And here's some examples. Among them, Shakespeare, but they're supposed to say Shakespeare. Shakespeare, and even Shacklestaff. Okay, so this looks like maybe someone with a German background, maybe Scandinavia, maybe French. Shakespeare himself didn't spell his name the same way in any two of his 6 known signatures. Interesting, he himself did not have a standard way of spelling. Was he doing that on purpose as an author, as an artist, or he didn't start with one name and that's how he grew up, or one spelling? He even spelled his name 2 different ways in his will. So will is when, you know, you write these things out, it's called a will. So that when you die, especially people like himself, I'm sure he made some money, but it could be for regular people. You know, you own a house, cars, you have some savings, and you have to write a will and say, my one good son, Phil Cho, I leave the house. So he will inherit the house. And then the will says, my one wild son, Hamilton, I leave him my pet chihuahua and a box of donuts, right? And that's legally, people know who's going to get what. So next, by the late 16th century and early 17th century, some progress had been made. It's another 100 years, another 200 years, in standardizing spelling due to the work of various scholars. It gets to be a hassle. I don't care if you're a scholar. If you got to change the German way, and the French way, the Dutch way, forget it. By then, however, English spelling was far from a simple phonetic. Phonetic is the sounds, okay, system. So you see here on the bottom, I mentioned you there was actually no spice. And you know pinch is when I was a little boy, girls, they didn't hit you, they pinched you. That was worse, you'd rather get hit. And then pinch is used in cooking, just a little bit of like salt or sugar, but they said spice, so a pinch of spice. That's supposed to make the food taste better. But what they're saying here is it makes a variety of the language, okay? And I mentioned Kent. Kent is accounting in Southeast England. It's also accounting in Seattle, Washington. I used to go to Kent quite frequently. For one thing, word pronunciations had changed too rapidly or too quickly for a truly phonetic spelling to keep up. So when things are changing constantly, it's like the price of computers, you can't keep up. Also, English had borrowed from many languages and ended up having far too many words, more than 40, for the 26 letters in its Roman alphabet. Yes, we have 26 letters. You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, sausage, G, right? We have 26. By the time printing houses finally began to agree on standard spellings, many of these written forms were only a shadow of their spoken selves. So that means kind of like they were a weak copy of themselves, the spoken word. In other words, spelling and pronunciation sometimes had little in common. That's not good. Okay, finally, in 1755, that's more current, 250 years later, Samuel Johnson gave English its first great dictionary. Sounds like an interesting question, Brother Terence. When did English have its first great dictionary? 1970. Okay. His choice of spellings may not have always been the best or the easiest, but the book helped to make the spellings of most English words uniform. And uniform means the same. I'm not talking about the police uniform or army uniform, but uniform means these things are uniform. Oh, they're all the same. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Eventually, people became aware of the need for correct spelling. Meanwhile, remember, and don't forget this, the need. Yes, it is a need. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, Noah Webster, I'm sure you're familiar with that. I was, as a kid, the Webster Dictionary, was standardizing American English in his American Dictionary of the English Language and American Spelling Book. Although the British had been complaining about the messiness of English spelling for some time, it was the Americans, with their fanaticism, and fanaticism means you like something so much you're crazy about it. So Americans at that time, because of the Puritan beginnings, were fanatics for efficiency. They want efficiency. They don't want chaos in the language. And they screamed the loudest. Webster not only favored a simplified, more phonetic spelling system, but also tried to persuade Congress to pass a law making the use of non-standard spelling a punishable offense. That sounds like now with all this wokeism and crazyism. You know, I identify as a shoe. So if you don't call me shoe, I wanna try to get you arrested. So here, this fellow was saying, hey, if somebody misspells a word, I want them arrested by the police. I mean, it's just nonsense. But when you're a fanatic, that's how you think. Okay. Let me match up with my book here to make sure I'm following along correctly. Okay, I know where I'm at. Okay. So I forget, Lai Lai and Yishuan, if you bought the book, which usually your girls do, but you don't have to because I make the copies, we would be on 37. Okay, we'd be on page 37. All right. Mark Twain was of the same mind, but laziness figured into his opinion. Yeah, and Mark Twain was a famous author, Huckleberry Finn. He wasn't concerned so much with the difficulty of spelling words as with the trouble in writing them. He became a fan of the phonographic alphabet created by Isaac Pitman, the inventor of shorthand, a system in which symbols represent words, phrases, and letters. So when I was growing up, secretaries, besides having to type like, I don't know, 65 words a minute on the typewriter, and again, no computers. You also had to take shorthand in case their boss wanted something written down quickly. It takes too long to write down the whole language, so you have to write a shorthand system, a scientific system with words, phrases, and letters, and make it short. But then from that, you can write out the complete English. To write the word laugh, Twain wrote in a simplified alphabet, which is the name of the book. The pen has to make 14 strokes. No labor is saved to penmen. So he's saying, when you write the word laugh, you have to move your pen 14 different directions. So he gets tired, is what he's saying. No labor is saved to the penman. But write the same word in the phonographic alphabet, again, for the shorthand, Twain continued. The pen had to make just 3 strokes. As much as Twain would have loved it, Pitman's phonographic alphabet never caught on. It never became popular. Kind of like, I know all you guys, my students here from all your countries, you know the metric system. How many centimeters and millimeters and that kind of stuff. When I was in middle school, they brought that to the United States. They said, well, all of Europe has it and Asia, so we better learn this. And we never liked it. And it was really difficult to understand. So, as they say, it never caught on. Interest in reforming English spelling continued to gain momentum on both sides of the Atlantic. For a while, it seemed as if every famous writer and scholar had jumped on the spelling bandwagon. So if you see down here, it says, jump on the bandwagon, join a popular movement. So I'll give you, because you're like, band and wagon? Isn't band about music? And what's a wagon? We don't even use that word anymore. So I'll give you an example. Again, for those sports guys like Temujin and Alex and Phil, let's say I told you I'm indifferent about different things like the Lakers, but the Rams just won, the football team, LA Rams just won the Super Bowl recently. So, if you have your regular fans and they're there every week or whatever, then that's okay. But, they had to suffer through the losing, and I think they changed the quarterback this year. So, but once they start winning and they get in the playoffs and they look like they might win the Super Bowl, that's when a lot of people who aren't the normal fans or regular fans, they jump on the bandwagon because it looks very possible Rams going to win the Super Bowl. And then they say, I'm a Ram fan, man. I love it. They're just jumping on the bandwagon. Okay. So again, it seemed every famous writer and scholar had jumped on the spelling bandwagon, which means we want good spelling. Spelling reform associations, when reform means to fix, began to pop up everywhere, just like McDonald's in the 70s and Starbucks in the 2000s. In 1876, the American Philological, not philosophical, Philological Association called for the urgent, which means now, immediate, adoption of 11 new spellings: live, though, through, whist, catalog, definite, guard, give, HV, infinite, and R. That HV is probably who've. In the same year, the Spelling Reform Association was formed. Look at that. Spelling Reform Association. Followed 3 years later by a British version. So the British copied it or had their own Spelling Reform Association because, again, they had chaos with the language there too. The Americans did it first because they were fanatics, as we said up here earlier. Okay. So we're now on page 38. Okay. In 1906, the philanthropist Andrew Carnegie gave $250,000. Wow, can you imagine how much 250,000 was in 1906? Maybe $1 million. To help establish the Simplified Spelling Board. Philanthropist is a rich, the meaning is it's a rich person that likes to donate money to causes. So again, any of my best guys there, Temujin, Phil, Alex, if you guys become rich, like Temujin says he wants to be a K-pop singer, you become rich, remember, be a philanthropist and give money to the Teacher Barry Fund, and I will greatly take care of that money. So don't forget that. Right? I'll take good care of your donation. The board quickly issued a list of 300 words that were commonly spelled two ways, such as axe and axe, and called for the simpler of the two. So get rid of one. The board helped to gain acceptance for quite a few American spellings, including catalog, demagogue, and program. I think program before ancient English was 2 M's and an E. And catalog was, I think, OGUE. That's if I remember correctly. Eventually, the simplified spelling board got carried away with its work. Carried away, oh, it's not good. Calling for such spellings as tough, deaf, trouble, and you. So you know, this is still around, but there's also a version TOUGH. Now we use an A. We need a U here, and we need to reverse this an OU. This call for simplified spelling quickly went out of fashion, so stopped being popular, particularly with the onset or the start of World War I and the death of Andrew Carnegie. So there we go. Even in World War I, we're still struggling with the correct spellings of the language. The movement never died out completely, however. Spelling reform continued to be an ongoing, if less dramatic process, as it had been for centuries. Without the benefit of large donations from Temujin and Phil or outside agencies, many words have shed or gotten rid of useless letters. See, deposit looks like French, deposite, but it lost its E, as have fossil, like the dinosaur bones, so it's only FOSSIL, and secretariat, which became secretary. Music, so you see it lost the K. Physic, lost the K, have dropped their needless Ks, and catalog and dialogue have shed or gotten rid of their last two vowels, like I said. As long as the world goes around, which means keeps on spinning, language will continue to change. New words will be added to English, ENG, dakbo, and spellings will be altered. Pizza was another one, okay? Pizza came from the area of Pisa, Italy, which is spelled P-I-S-A, but pizza English, so we put two Z's. It's not the way you'll see it in Italy. So again, spellings will be altered, which means changed. But because people are most comfortable with the familiar, which is the way it is around the world, it's not likely that we'll ever see a major change in the way most words are spelled. Anyway, what would we do without the challenge of English spelling? What would we do? Like Miss Kalaibo, she loves challenges in her field. What keeps her going, right? All right, so I have finished the history lesson there, okay? So as we're getting a groove on the new pattern of study with these kinds of things. All right, now we're gonna go into vocabulary. So let me just make a note here. I will not say, well, let me go through this first and then I'll tell you, okay? So here, vocabulary in context. So select the letter of the answer that is closest in meaning to the bold word or phrase. So the first one is, the merging of the different languages gave birth to Old English. They give you crossing, confusion, blending, complication. Hopefully, which I don't know if you'll do it, I would prefer that you, because it's an English practice. You don't get a lot of English practice if you put one is, you know, one is F, two is G, three is X. If you would write merging and then do like an equal sign and then write the one that's closest in English, this gives you more of a practice in English, and it's a better way of remembering because you'll see the two words written out instead of, again, one is A, two is F, three is C, right? That's kind of the easy way. Did I say lazy? No. So if you can do that, it'd be better for you. Two, by the 14th century, English with its mix of languages had evolved into what is called Middle English. And they give you improved, see, I'm not even going to say the letters. Improved, appeared, spread, developed. 3, even scholars were quite indifferent to matters of consistency in spelling and were known to spell the same word several different ways in a single sentence. Your options are uncaring about, superior about. Actually, a person can be both. I don't care about you and I'm superior to you. I want a divorce. And then next, unsocial and confused. Which one is the closest? 4, people who are even liberal about the spelling of their names, using different spellings on the same page. Your options are receptive, interested, understanding, and free. I'm free, but I have no money. Okay. 5, Americans with their fanaticism, which I explained a couple of times, 3-4 times, for efficiency, complained the most about the messiness of English language. Spirit, obsession, excitement, fascination. 6, interested in reforming English spelling, continued to gain momentum on both sides of the Atlantic. Be temporary, become stable, grow stronger, get weak. 7, the philanthropist Andrew Carnegie gave $250,000, like Temujin's going to give to the Teacher Berry Fund, to help establish the Simplified Spelling Board. Person who is an expert in language, person who actively helps others, person famous for his or her written work. Yes, a philanthropist can be a female also. Person known for his or her wealth. Remember, pick the closest. Maybe Inkujin is a philanthropist or Same, I don't know. Oh, Miss Caroline, she's a philanthropist. 8, the spelling board outlived its usefulness when it got carried away with its work, became overenthusiastic about, was removed from, got to continue, became successful. You don't have to worry about this. This is minor stuff, something you have to get into later. 9, the call for simplified spelling went out of fashion with the onset of World War I. Outcome, tragedy, and start to remember the right onset, your answer with the equal sign, then you pick one of these words or make up your own. Onset means sausagey, okay? Might not be correct, but it's the format. And 10, the last one on this group of vocabulary, in context. Many words shed useless letters, changed, kept, dropped, added. Okay. All right, now we're going to go for skimming and scamming for details, which I've explained to you before what that means. Skim, not scamming, that means to steal from somebody. Scam. So you quickly go through things, right? But here, there's no multiple choice. You're going to have to actually write a sentence, at least a sentence for each one of these 10. So no, oh, it's A or B. There is no A or B here, all right? You're going to have to practice writing your English. And this is a practice of your reading comprehension to show that you understood what you read. Or at least listen to me. I found out some students, they don't go back and read to get the answers. They just listen to the tape one time. Okay, 1. According to the reading, what combination of languages form the Celtic language? Okay, so I might have some of my students say, it was Mongolian, and it was a Spanish, and a Tagalog, and French. But you know that's not true. 2, name 4 conquering peoples whose language affected the development of the English language. So when I mentioned in the readings, if it wasn't that clear to you that the people conquered each other, just list the peoples there who affected the languages, and they'll tell you the countries, right? It's more than 1 or 2, so You have to write a little. Okay, 3. Before the invention of the printing press, English was mostly what kind of language? Okay, so I'll give you a hint there, because you can say, what do you mean? What kind was it? Do you mean, was it delicious? No, that's not what I mean. I mean, was it, like I mentioned before, Korean and Japanese, and very concrete, uniform, or was it a different kind of situation with the language? Okay. All right. Next. 4. Why were the typesetters of the 1500s not very helpful when it came to making spelling standard? There was a reason why. 5. Who was responsible for giving English its first grade dictionary? No, it was not Genghis Khan. Okay. Or Donald Trump. I've had answers like that before. Was it Donald Trump? Was he around in the 1500s? 6. What kind of spelling system did Noah Webster favor? It was not. The people read the name Noah, and they say, oh, from the Bible. That's what kind of spelling system? No. Nothing to do with that, Noah. What is shorthand, and who invented it? And again, I've had funny students say, it was a lady, and one hand was big and the other hand was short. That's what shorthand was, and her name was a lady. Okay, 8. What purpose did Spelling Reform Association serve? What did they do? What did they accomplish? 9. In the last sentence of the 11th paragraph, so you're going to have to look up there, but there's numbers on the side, so you should be able to find it. So again, in the last sentence of the 11th paragraph, not sentence, to what does the last there refer? Okay. What is that last there talking about? 10. Why are we not likely to see major changes in the way most words are spelled? Why is this probably not going to happen? Okay, so this finishes our first book. Now we got to go to the more daily activity communication book. I'll put this one aside. Okay. Oh. And we're going to talk about going places, and the loving thing. Everybody loves the DMV. Okay, they're joking here because everybody hates the DMV. If you see the drawings of the people, they're all angry. You know, everybody hates the DMV. I don't know how many times I've gone to the DMV, and you'll get in there and they'll say, hey, you get into line A. They look at my document. Okay, I get into line A. That line takes 20 minutes. I get up to the window, and they say, oh, that guy had you go in the wrong line. You're supposed to get line C. So I have to go to the end of line C, and then that one takes 40 minutes. And then you think you're done, you're in the right place. You're like, thank God I'm in the right place now. I've wasted an hour here. And then they say, well, the document's not done. Now you're going to have to go to line F. And then that line is 45 minutes long. And then that won't be your last one either. So everybody just not loves, but hates the DMV. Or maybe they love to hate it. So here we go. Are you fed up with hanging around, waiting for buses and trains? So again, here, I'm not going to spend my time in the first reading, explaining what these words are. You have to look these up. So the bold words in black, you're going to write One, fed up, and then you're going to say, what's the meaning of fed up? That means you eat too much food. And then what is hanging around? So all the darkened words here. Okay? They go everywhere, but waiting at the bus stop gets pretty chilly in the winter. And we're not talking about food here. Cabs are really convenient, but what does convenient mean? But they sure can be expensive. What's the perfect solution? Drive. Really? Okay. I know. You may not have a car. The good news is that it's cheaper to get a license than to get a car. Ha, of course. License maybe cost you $100, $200, but a used car, maybe 10,000. And although you can't borrow a driver's license, at least you can't legally. I know people who have done that. It's like they borrow their brothers and they look enough like their brother that sometimes they pass. You can rent a car, but watch out for those crazy drivers. You'll need to make sure you know the rules of the road. Each state has all the information and rules about getting a license on its DMV website. DMV stands for Division or Department of Motor Vehicles. The bad news, there is usually a test. It's so funny, the website. When I got my license as a teenager, and then for many years, you had to go to the DMV and get a booklet. And sometimes they were out. There was no website you could study from home. Okay. All right, so here's the first dialogue. Leah, hi, I'd like to get a New Jersey driver's license. DMV worker. They have that attitude like, what do you want, right? Do you want to renew a New Jersey license or apply for a new one? Leah, I don't have a New Jersey license, but I have my license from my country. DMV worker, you can't use that here. Do you have an application? No, I don't. You'll need to fill out an application. Do you have the required picture ID? Yeah, they always talk about picture ID. You can't go up there. Here's my credit card from Walmart. No. Leah, yes, I do, and I have my passport. Good girl. That's a good one right there, the passport. Do I need anything else? DMV worker, you can check this list of required documents. If you have all the paperwork, you just need to take a vision test and the written test. When that person is finished, you can go to the booth number 9 and have your picture taken. Lisa, yikes. That's like saying, people don't say that anymore. They're saying, oh my God. Otke. Or from Mexicanos, híjole. Okay. Can I skip the picture? I'm having a bad hair day. I wonder what that means. Please look that up. Bad hair day. Hair is angry. I don't know what that means. DMV worker, sorry. Our state requires a photo license. My first girlfriend, should I tell you my age at the time? Was quite old. 19. She took a picture at the DMV for her license, and they actually sent her the license with her eyes closed. They didn't say, hey, you got to come back and take it again. Your eyes are open. They didn't care. But what about a bad hair day? Okay, now the next dialogue, let's go for a ride. Everybody looks happy here, right? All right. So you'd like to take the family for a drive in the country. A train might take you there, but it's so much easier to see the sights. Again, same thing. Tell me the definition. What does it mean, see the sights? By driving around in a car. Maybe it's time to rent a car. It's always a good idea to check many car rental companies to find the best price. And you should, because some will just try to rip you off, you know? It's the same thing for like trying to get parts to fix your car. Maybe let's say, you know, you need a new radiator for your car, and you call Track Auto and they tell you, you know, that of course they're going to ask you what year is your car, what is it? They say, okay, it's $200. And then you call, what's the other one, O'Brien or whatever, and that guy says, oh, it's 170. You're like, damn, I saved $70 there. And then you call Phil Chole's automatic drive company, and they're like, oh, it's 300. And you're like, man, this guy, he's a stealer. And then you call Tull's automotive shop, and Tull is nice. And Tull says, oh, we only charge you 160. You go to Tull's. He's the cheapest one of all those jokers, right? So there you go. And it's the same with the car rental. We'll try to tell you, oh, but we have this deal and that deal, and oh, it's wild. You can search on the internet or call the company's 800 number. What kind of car do you want? You need to decide on a type: economy, midsize, or luxury. So again, look that up. What is economy? We're not talking about the economy of the country. Midsize or luxury. You can choose a car that fits your needs. That should be one you should look up. It fits your needs, but it's not in bold, so you don't have to do it. Be prepared to pay more for larger cars. So the smaller car you get, which is actually better on gas, you will pay less. You also need to buy insurance just in case a bear in the country decides that your compact car is a lunch. So if you want, I can give you a little consumer advice here. Okay, this is aside from your English. It's always good, you know, like if I was living in a foreign country, I would, hopefully people would tell me, hey, be careful of this. You're an American, you don't know what goes on here. People will try to rob you or take advantage of you in certain ways, okay? So I'll give you an example. If you're probably gonna pay, I don't think you can pay, you're gonna pay with a credit card. So if you have a credit card, call your credit card before and ask them if, and some cards do. I've had cards that do it. They will, they supply a car insurance for you. You know, like I said, some credit cards do and some don't. So if your card does, that's going to save you, your credit card is going to save you a lot of money. Okay, because you'll find out you'll pay probably more, even if you get a really good deal on the car. So let's say, and they'll never ask you at the car dealer or the rental shop. They'll say, okay, we're going to give you a deal. Your car is going to be, the lowest we can give you is 30 a day, and you're going to want it for 3 days. You're like, wow, I got 3 days, $90. Even with the tax, it's going to be a little less than 100. Great. But they'll always tell you, you need insurance. And that's if you knew that your card company supplied it, you go, that's okay, just put it on my card, they will cover me. So they tell you need insurance, you go, oh, yeah, I don't have insurance. I mean, okay. And they'll tell you the insurance is 40 a day. Now you're paying 120 for this insurance, and it's more than what you did. So you're like, why am I paying over the 200s now? So that's some consumer advice to you. Get to know the benefits of your card. Just don't use it. It can save you a lot of money. And then the last one, I had a friend. We went to Seattle. He rented a car, and then they'll always tell you, like when you're at the beginning of the process, and they'll tell you, okay, you're renting the car right now. The car has half a tank of gas. You have to bring the car back with the same amount, a half a tank of gas. If you are under that, then we will charge you for our gasoline. So my friend was fooling around, and it was our last day, and we had to come back. And I'm like, you better put some gas in the car because you're under the limit. I don't care. You know, they're going to charge me the same thing, so I'll let them do it for me. Why do I have to stop and sweat? So I said, okay, if that's how you feel. So of course we turned it in, and the guy said, well, I see that you brought the car with less gas than when you started, so we're going to have to put our gas in there to make it halfway. My friend said, "Oh, that's okay. Less work for me." So I think at that time, gas was, let's say, $2, $2 a gallon, and let's say he needed you know, five, 5 gallons. So they said, well, unfortunately, our gas, since we can charge what we want, our gas is not $2 a gallon. Our gas is $6 a gallon here. Sorry. So now he had to pay $30. Okay. $30 instead of maybe like 6, right? Then he started crying. So that's another way they attack you. So consumer advice to you. Again, I accept donations at my email. Okay, we're gonna go to dialogue here. Leah, hello. I'd like to rent a car for the weekend. Friendly rent a car. Do you have your driver's license with you? Yes, I do. If you don't have it with you, they won't rent a car. Friendly rent a car. If you want an economy car, we have a nice compact outside. Is it a 4-door? Friendly rent a car. No, it isn't. It's a 2-door, but it has a hatchback. So again, these words too. What is a hatchback? I want to see a definition. And it has a sunroof. Do you have anything bigger and faster? Friendly rent a car. Yeah, bigger and faster. Well, we have a mid-sized convertible. What's a convertible? But the compact is more economical. Leah, how about a big van? I have a large family of 22 children. Friendly rent a car. Sure, we have a van. It's very roomy. It's the biggest and most expensive of the 3. You're lucky he told you it was the most expensive. Leah, well, I like the convertible for myself, but I guess I'll take the van. Maybe next time. Wow. Okay. And this is our last dialogue for the day. Oops. Sorry, officer. I make mistakey poo. Like Caroline maybe was driving 99 miles an hour in a 35-mile zone, right? Oops. What are those flashing lights behind you? Oh no. Were you careful to watch the speed limit signs along the road? Those flashing lights don't mean a party this time, do they? They mean the police officer would like to have a little chat with you. What is chat? If you know British English, you know what this is. Americans don't use it. Unless you're on the computer. Maybe you shouldn't have rented that fancy car after all. So what they're saying here is a lot of times another consumer advice is don't rent a red sports car. If you rent a red car, they say that's the easiest color for police to watch. They will watch you, give you a ticket. The flashing lights on a police car usually mean the police officer has noticed a moving violation. What is a moving violation? If a cop, do we know cop? Is that a potato? Pulls you over, move to the shoulder of the road. What is the shoulder? I thought that's on a human body. So as safely as you can, be careful of traffic on the highway. It's important to be respectful to the officer, even if you're not sure why he or she is stopping you. So when he pulls you over, you should say, "Hi, officer. What's going on?" You don't say, "Who the hell are you? What the hell do you want? I got to get a burger." Okay. So that's our last dialogue for the day. State trooper. Good morning, sir. I pulled you over because the speed limit is 50 miles an hour. You were driving much faster than that. You were doing 70. Hopefully that's not Alex he's talking to. Oh no, it's Alan. Okay. I'm sorry, officer. I didn't notice the sign, but I thought I was driving slower than that. State trooper, I need to see your license and registration. I don't have my license with me. I think I left it home, or I left it at the bar in K-Town where I drank 12 beers before I got behind the wheel. State trooper, you need to have license and registration with you in the car at all times, sir. I'm going to issue you a ticket for speeding and another one for not having the proper documents. You can call the clerk's office to find out the amount of the fines. Alan, can I just pay you now? This is where they get angry. I think you can do this in some countries. Sir, police officers aren't allowed to take money. You have to call the clerk's office. You can go there to pay in person, or you can mail it in. This is my first speeding ticket. And what does the state trooper say? Have a nice day, sir. Okay, do we have anything else? No, we don't. All right, folks. So that's it for our 2 books for the day. So let me go back to stop share. Hey, I'm back. How you doing? So luckily we've just finished our 3rd week. So we're just moving right along. Time is just burning. So we've just started spring, but this quarter continues at this pace. When it finishes, we'll be in summer. All right. So until then, till next week, I shall let you go. Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.